They're like, oh yeah, guy with Pensy steam comes in every once in a while. They're not really much really test LED in the headlight, but we'll take this.
Known quite well by all. She's the regular combination. She's a Wabash cannonball.
Proceed to 15. Hey everybody, this is Pensy Joe here. Today we're going to be doing the top 5 brass hybrids that Broadway Limited Imports needs to make. There will be some very interesting locomotives we're going to be seeing in this list. All of them are steam, of course. Some of them are not traditional, some of them are unexpected, and some of them you should expect. Anyways, this will be a fun list that I brought up. There will probably be more in the future if I wanted to do another brass hybrids. But without further ado, we'll get into this video and see what will be the top 5 brass hybrids that Broadway Limited Imports needs to make. Number 5 is the John Henry steam turbine. Now, the John Henry is a steam turbine prototype that was made for the Norfolk and Western by Baldwin Locomotive Works. And unfortunately, there was only one. There were plans to get around 25 from Norfolk and Western, but Baldwin said they have to order 50 in order to mass produce these, which is a shame, but, you know, this is as close as it got to being successful for a steam turbine. And this is also one of the largest steam engines ever made. It is ginormous, this machine. It had 2 tenders, and the locomotive was about right around 100 feet long. It was just absolutely ginormous. And in model form, you'll definitely see in a few of just how massive this thing is. This is by, I forgot what the name of this brand is, but they made a model of this. They can also make DCC sound versions of this model. And I can tell you what, guys, it is a pretty model, and that would be really cool to see as a brass hybrid. I mean, we have the S2 as a steam turbine. Why not have another steam turbine, and this time be a successful steam turbine? Now, it wasn't super successful. It was the most successful steam turbine out there in terms of efficiency and running. And I really think that the John Henry would definitely be a perfect candidate for one of the more diesel-looking candidates of steam turbines. And as you can see, this model is absolutely beautiful, but however, this model is like around $3,000 to $5,000. It is absolutely ridiculous, but that's what happens when it comes to low volumes. Number 4 is the Virginian AE Class 210-10-2. It is the only other 210-10-2 to ever exist in the world, and actually the more successful than the other class made by the Santa Fe. This locomotive had a service life of at least 30 years before all being subjected to secondary service or to be retired and sent for scrap. These locomotives deserve more recognition, in my opinion, than the Santa Fe 210-10-2s. The reason why the Santa Fe 210-10-2s were more well known is because of Lionel primarily. And I really think Lionel should have gone with the Virginian AE 210-10-2 over the Santa Fe 210-10-2. And I believe Broadway should do a brass hybrid 210-10-2 of the Virginian AE, because there's only one brass company that has ever made the Virginian AE 210-10-2, and that is NJCB. And here you see the model right here. It is a stunning model. Yes, it has a tiny tendler, but you got to remember this locomotive is made to pull coal trains up and down the mountains of Virginia. And I really think that this model would be absolutely perfect for brass hybrid. It really deserves the recognition for being a successful class out of the 2 classes that were ever produced of 210-10-2s in the world. Number 3 is the Great Northern R2. The R2 is a 2882 locomotive of the Great Northern. It was a heavy freight locomotive in the Great Northern Railroad, and a very unique one too. It was very unique since it was one of the only few articulated locomotives that had a bell pair firebox, as you can see in this photo right here. It's also unique because it has the air pumps in the front, but also with a Vandy tender. C&O has locomotives like this already, but I believe that this locomotive will be a great contender in the brass hybrid line, not only because of its size, but because of also its uniqueness and a lot of details that are on this locomotive, as you can see in this Crescendo model right here. It's absolutely gorgeous, and I believe that there can be two colors that you can apply to this, just like the Great Northern S2. And it would be a great candidate to expand the library of Great Northern that Broadway Limited has just started with the S2. Number 2 is the Union Pacific 49er, specifically the Mountain Class locomotive. This is a locomotive that I believe Broadway should make. It's a streamlined Union Pacific locomotive and has only been made by one brass company, but I do not know exactly what the name is. However, this locomotive was famous for pulling the 49er. This locomotive, I think, would be rather popular for UP enthusiasts and collectors since it is a Union Pacific prototype and it has the famous hot dog scheme that Lionel loves to put on their Vision Line Challenger. Well, Challengers, since they did the CSA2 now with the hot dog scheme as well. And I really think that this locomotive would be a perfect candidate for the brass hybrid line to expand the Union Pacific catalog that Broadway says is one of the more popular lines and railroads that they have for their lineup. This is what the model looks like in HO scale. Again, I don't know what the brass company that made this model is, but as you can see, it has black wheels with red trim, and it's a very unique scheme. Yes, it has the hot dog bun color, or the hot dog, Oscar Mayer kind of meat color, and it has the mustard yellow stripes along the sides and on the roof. Again, I think it'll be a very colorful locomotive and a really popular locomotive to make, and a rather unique locomotive since there's not a lot of different types of streamlined locomotives out there with this wheel arrangement. Honorable mention number 1 is the Northern Pacific Z8 Challenger. We've already have 2 Challengers being made by Broadway Limited, but at this point in time, I really don't think that the Z8 Challenger would be a perfect fit to make as a brass hybrid line locomotive. Yes, there's a lot of piping on this model, but there's already a Z8 Challenger made in HO scale in plastic form by Ather and Genesis. Now, we're not sure when that will come back around, but you can still see them online from now and then for a reasonable value, but they're actually getting closer to the brass hybrid values. The reason why I mention this model is because Northern Pacific is also made with their A-class locomotive, the 484, also a museum model in real life, and I really think that this locomotive can potentially be a future project that could most likely be made as not really a brass hybrid, but maybe a die-cast plastic locomotive. Here you can see a model of the locomotive in HO scale, and I believe this is either a brass model or a Ather and Genesis model. Now, if you can tell if it's an Ather and Genesis model, please let me know in the comments. If it is a brass model, please let me know in the comments. Again, I really just don't think it would be fit for the brass hybrid line at this time. Honorable mention number 2, the Reading Crusader. The Crusader is one of those models or prototypes that you would think Broadway Limited should make right out the get-go. They already made the Reading Railroad T1 484, and you would think that a streamlined Crusader would be popular as well, since it was made in MTH's O-gauge line and a couple other lines and brass lines that are out there. It was not like a train that was, not seen or heard of before, and it's actually pretty well known in the community of model trains. However, the reason why I don't believe this model should be, produced by Broadway Limited as a brass hybrid is because GHB International has already made a complete train set of these. Now, you can see these come up from time to time on eBay and used dealers, such as trains.com and all that stuff. And they're not too expensive yet to warrant a brass hybrid. Now, you can't find these in brass, though I just don't think these are ready yet to get a brass hybrid treatment. It's already obvious. Number one is the big engine, the Pennsylvania Railroad S1. Who would have thought? It's a no-brainer. Broadway Limited Imports needs to make the Pennsylvania Railroad S1. It's a highly requested model by the BLI community. A lot of us Pennsy modelers have been waiting for something to be made that can handle at least 22-inch radius curves. Okay, how about at least 24-inch radius curves? I think a lot of people can handle getting track that's at least 24-inch curve radius, right? Well, it's just one of those models that just needs to be made. It's very famous. Unfortunately, it was scrapped, the only prototype ever made. And I would argue it's more successful than the S2 that Broadway Limited has made in terms of performance of the prototype in real life. And while there are many brass companies out there that have made the S2, none of them were able to figure out how to make the locomotive articulate on smaller curves without actually making the locomotive be articulated. Like this GEM models right here. This GEM model locomotive right here actually can articulate between the two driver sets. And that's not accurate to the real prototype. So I would think if Broadway were to figure that out, it would be a really cool and really popular model that everyone would want to buy. Maybe even as popular or even more popular than their Q2 that they're going to do soon for Paragon 4 and for the Stealth line. I believe this would be a very popular model, and not just for Pennsylvania fans, but for railroad fans across the world. The S1 is known for being big and being even slightly bigger than a big boy. It may not be as big as the steam turbine John Henry, but it's definitely the biggest steam engine in terms of traditional locomotion. And that is why I believe the Pennsylvania S1 should be, if not needs to be, produced as a brass hybrid by Broadway Limited Imports. I hope you guys enjoy this top 5 that I made for brass hybrids. I'm pretty sure I'll do more again later on if people want to see another top 5 brass hybrids that Broadway should be making or needs to be making. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time. This is Pensy Joe signing out again. Bye now.
Rush of the engine, hear the lonesome hobo squall, riding through the jungle on the Wabash Cannonball. Well, the eastern states are dandy, so the western people say. St. Louis to Chicago, Rock Island by the way. From the hills of Minnesota, where the rippling waters fall, no chances can be taken on the Wabash Cannonball. Oh, listen to the jingle, the rumble and the roar, as she glides along the woodland to the hill and by the shore. Hear the mighty rush of the engine, hear the lonesome hobo squall, riding through the jungle on the Wabash Cannonball. Now here's to Daddy Claxton, may his name forever stand, and may he be remembered in the courts throughout the land. When his earthly race is over, let the curtains round him fall. We'll carry him home to victory on the Wabash Cannonball. Oh, listen to the jingle, the rumble and the roar, as she glides along the woodland through the hill and by the